Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Jaya Braja Janarandana Yasodanandana Jaya Braja Janarandana Yamuna Teravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Teravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Jaya Braja Janarandana Yasodanandana Jaya Braja Janarandana Yamuna Teravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Teravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Prabhupada Chila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo Jaya Radha Namo Radha Namo Radha Radhe Radha Namo Radha Namo Radha Namo Radha Nitai ki jai, Shri Radha Damodar ki jai, Lalita Vishaka Devi ki jai, Nitai Go Premanande Haribo. Krishna. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Good morning. Thank you for coming to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. We continue reading 4th canto Srimad Bhagavatam. I think we nearly finish in the Puranjana story in chapter 27. Oh no, we're not yet finishing. Still quite a few chapters. Anyway, today's verse is 12. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yukteshevam param Yukteshevam pramattasya kutumba sakta cetasa asa sada savaikalo yo priya priya yoshitam Yukteshavam pramattasya kutuba sakta chetasa asasada savai kalo yo priya yoshitam. Word-to-word translation. Yukteshu, to beneficial activities, evam, thus, pramattasya, being inattentive, kutumba, to kith and king, asakta, attached, chetasa, consciousness, asasada, arrived, saha, that, vai, certainly, kala, time, ya, which, apriyaha, not very pleasing, priya yoshitam, for persons attached to woman. Translation. Thus King Puranjana, being attached to fruitive activities, karma kandya, as well as kitanking, and being obsessed with polluted consciousness, eventually arrived at that point, not very much liked by those who are overly attached to material things. Purport. In this verse, the words priya yoshitam and apriyaha are very significant. The word yoshit means woman, and priya means dear or pleasing. Death is not very much welcome for those who are too much attached to material enjoyment, which culminates in sex. There is an instructive story in this connection. Once when a saintly person was passing on his way, he met a prince, the son of a king, and he blessed him, saying, "My dear prince, you may live forever." The sage next met a saintly person and said to him, "You may either live or die." Eventually the sage met a brahmachari devotee, and he blessed him, saying, "My dear devotee, you may die immediately." Finally the sage met a hunter, and he blessed him, saying, "Neither live nor die." The point is that those who are very sensual and are engaged in sense gratification do not wish to die. Generally, a prince has enough money to enjoy his senses. Therefore, the great sage said that he should live forever. For as long as he lived, he could enjoy life, but after his death, he would go to hell. Since the brahmachari devotee was leading a life of severe austerities and penances in order to be promoted back to Godhead, the sage said that he should die immediately, so that he need not continue to labor hard and could instead go back home, back to Godhead. A saintly person may either live or die, for during his life he is engaged in serving the Lord, and after his death he also serves the Lord. Thus this life and the next are the same for saintly devotee, for in both he serves the Lord. Since the hunter lives a very ghastly life due to killing animals, and since he will go to hell when he dies, he is advised to neither live nor die. King Puranjana finally arrived at the point of old age. In old age, the senses lose their strength, and although an old man desires to enjoy his senses, and especially sex life, he is very miserable because his instruments of enjoyment no longer function. Such sensualists are never prepared for death. They simply want to live on and extend their life by so-called scientific advancement. Some foolish Russian scientists also claim that they are going to make man immortal through scientific advancement. Under the leadership of such crazy fellows, civilization is going on. Cruel death, however, comes and takes all of them away, despite their desire to live forever. This type of mentality was exhibited by Hiranyakashipu. But when the time was ripe, the Lord personally killed him within a second. Yukteshivam pramattasya kutumba saktachetasa asasada savaikalo yo priya yoshitam. Thus King Puranjana, being attached to fruitive activities, karma kandiya, as well as kit and kin, and being obsessed with polluted consciousness, eventually arrived at that point, not very much liked by those who are overly attached to material things. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Ganandana Shalakaya Chaksurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayarupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vancha Kalpa Tarubhescha Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatadine Narayana Namaskrityam Naruttamam Naruchava Devim Saraswati Vyasa Tato Jayamudhirayat Nashtaprayasha Badrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashlake Bhaktir Bhavatina Ishtaki. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, I seek your heart blessings for this class. It's a spontaneous class for me, so we had a busy days preparing for His Holiness Devamrita Swami's arrival, and I have not had a chance to prepare for this class. But if we read Srimad Bhagavatam daily and here, there's always something to say, and there are some realizations from personal life that we can always share, and of course there are wonderful pastimes of Srila Prabhupada which we can always remember and repeat them. So this verse is getting us to the point where King Puranjana is getting old, inevitable, right? Dehinasmin yathadehe Komaram Yavam Jara. Jara, old age. Nobody likes it, nobody wants it. I mean, young people don't realize what it is. They just think they're going to be young forever until they reach to that point when the body starts to dysfunction. And as described here, the senses becoming very, what's the word? Lose their strength. But the desires are still there. If we didn't live the spiritual life, the desires for sense enjoyment, they don't go anywhere, right? I mean, even in our short lifespan, we could see that if I liked ice cream 20 years ago, I may like it 10 years ago, I still like it, and probability that I'll still like it in 10 years, quite the same, right? Especially if it's a taste that reminds me of your childhood or something like that. In fact, it may even increase as you go old. I also heard that the sweet taste is especially becoming prominent during the old age because the tongue buds or there's something just biologically that your taste buds are not so receptive to other tastes anymore, or they're not feeling the intensity of those tastes, but the sweet taste. So that's why you could see old people eating, chocolate and quite often in material world. At least my grandmothers used to have like that. And it is very painful for them to, for such persons to meet that old age. But Krishna says, Kalausmi in Bhagavad Gita, the time, and it's inevitable, I'll come in a form of death. And if the devotee has not developed a relationship with me, then and is pleased when the death arrives, he's as like this sage, doesn't matter, he lives or dies, he serves the Lord. So he's fully surrendered, like in that example that when a cat grabs a kitten by mouth, kitten is happily bouncing its legs, and kitten knows he is protected by his mother. Mother is carrying him to the place where is a safety. So devotee feels like that when the death arrives, that because he has developed a trustworthy relationship through service, he is okay. Whereas the mouse, of course, is fearful. Hiranyakashipu screamed something like "Mama" or something like that when he first saw Nrsimhadev. He was amazed. He was in fear, anxiety, and for them it comes like death, and nobody wants death. So they trying to prolong by different methods. Prabhupada wrote about Russian scientists back, this purport, 4th canto, that was probably 1972, 1973, when the 4th canto was finished, so we can say exactly 50 years ago. And it's still valid, not just for Russian scientists, but every scientist in the whole world. And in fact, even in medieval times, people were seeking for this holy grail that will give them the nectar of immortality. They were seeking for that. And in fact, even in ancient Egypt, they were doing all sort of disgusting even things, thinking that that may prolong their life. I don't want to give those drastic examples on Srimad Bhagavatam, but they were even putting the blood of infants and taking baths in the blood, things like that. They were trying to do, thinking that this may be an nectar of immortality that will give them, the young blood will give them, suck into them and will give them the health or the immunity or the youth. Yes, so people were because when we are lacking spiritual knowledge that we are not these bodies, then of course it's natural, even you can say, that people will do everything to just prolong this machine going on as much as possible. But for what purpose? There's no purpose. Just to prolong it, to play what? Football and tennis, roller skate, go on bicycles, enjoy the nature, the views, the sunsets and the sunrises. What's the purpose? And of course, those attachments to material body and everything that is connected with the material body are very deep-rooted. I have a vivid example of my own father, who, back in the 90s, he was very successful entrepreneur. He had a construction business. If he would sell it back then, late 90s, we would probably be dollar millionaires by now. But he lost it all, as karma goes. Yes, and I remember in the 90s he was given an interview in one of the local magazines in Novosibirsk. And they said, "What are your hobbies?" And my father, jokingly, but you can say that in this joke, this is exactly this mentality of a material sense enjoyer. So they said, what are your hobbies? He said, jazz, box, and sex. Like exactly as it says here in Srimad Bhagavatam. It culminates in sex, so that was the last one he mentioned. And first was jazz, good music. Box, that he was a boxer when he was a young person, so he still liked that to watch, good action. And of course, the last one that we've been discussing through this chapter many, many times already. So, and when he lost his business, I was wondering how he's going to go through it. He didn't. Many decades, it's been now 20 years, he still goes to his office, sits on that chair like he's still a president of the company. There's no more company. The chair is 15 years old. It's got cracks on this leather skin chair. It just looks horrible. Same, the table is it's like how wood deteriorates. So this wooden table looks horrific. So there's only remnants of the good times, but in his memory, he's so attached to that he's still thinking that he is the boss of that company. He still comes there and sits there. He's an old man, he's 65, he's, not working anymore, he's in a retirement. Still he comes there and thinks that he is working, although he's not doing there anything. He just maybe reads there something, watches news, like that. So it looks pathetic. It looks, it's only, there's only pity that arises from just this sight when all people do that. And when person is elevated like our beloved Srila Prabhupada, when he sees things like that, he starts to cry out of compassion. There's a story that when devotees were driving with Prabhupada in America, and he saw a golf course, and old people were playing golf, which is kind of, here in America it's probably a standard of a rich or upper class business people that are having a good time associating on a golf course, and quietness, beautiful green lush, nicely cut, quiet electric golf carts, and just birds chirping, and here we go. We still can, still have muscles to play. When Prabhupada saw it, he started to cry. They're wasting their life. Look at them. What are they doing? They're wasting their life. On the contrary, when Prabhupada saw a car accident in India, a drastic car accident when a truck hit a person and it was just smashed to pieces, devotees were like with Prabhupada, they were horrified. They were, it was a disgusting sight. The lady, the wife of the man, she saw that, and so she was crying like anything. And Prabhupada seems to be absolutely, you can say, not neutral, but just not even paying attention to this all. So when devotees asked, Prabhupada, this is a horrific scene. He said, what's the point of crying now? We should have cried while he's alive. In other words, we should have given, now it's too late to do anything. The karma will drive him wherever the destination is. But when the person is still alive, he still may develop his Krishna consciousness, which is the objective. So these days people go, when they're retiring, they go to the resorts and holidays. I remember in New Zealand also, when I was there, I went to Queenstown, which is kind of the golden destination for all the rich people across the globe. So I went there, to see this beautiful lake and the sea and the wildlife, and same thing the old people did. It was before Krishna consciousness for me. So all those old people, 65 plus, even 80s, they came and they stayed in this hotel. They went to this boat trip. I was probably the youngest on the boat with them, and I was looking at them. And at that time, of course, I said, okay, old people have good fun, But now I'm thinking, again, this is exactly what is the drama of this Kali Yuga, that we are bereft of the spiritual knowledge, and we're just wasting our time, wasting our youth, not cultivating Krishna consciousness, wasting our mature time thinking we just have to build a career, take care of children, and then wasting our old age when we just have to do everything to surrender finally. No, we're trying to completely ignore that fact that the death is around the corner. In fact, we don't even know when. Maybe it's in 5 minutes. That's how close it may be, even in 1 second. So we don't have that knowledge. It's interesting, in Russian language, human being is человек. Человек means, chelo means face, and vek means century or 100 years. So even the definition, if you can say, if you just take the word, etymological meaning, it means a face which is 100 years. In other words, that face will live no longer than 100 years. A definition in Kali Yuga that people live up to 100 years. Even that is not so much the case. If you take every country and take the average lifetime, there will be maximum 80 something years in the countries which have the biggest scientific advancement, like Japan and Switzerland, like that. They may have this lifespan of 80-something years, but the death rate is 100% across the world. The people are not taking it so seriously. This Maharaj Yudhishthira was asked, what's the most amazing thing in this world? And he said, most amazing thing is that, everybody saw death in their relatives, everybody saw death in their, around them. The death was there, but they think it never happens to them. A complete ignorance. So this is the story. And of course, these attachments, as I said, not just my body, but the attachments, as I gave example with my father, to his position, to his title, which was before, is very, you can see how people without spiritual knowledge are struggling like anything to get rid of those, to not get rid of those, but to get free from this bondage of identifying themselves with the director of a construction company, for example. Like when this war started in Ukraine, I heard a devotee speaking. He was saying about another devotee who had a house right in the middle of Hostomel, which was in the beginning when the invasion just started. It was like the drastic fights were there between Ukrainian and Russian armies. And this devotee asked this other devotee, he said, I know you have a house there, how are you feeling? I mean, it can be just bombed, it can be lost. And the devotee said, but I don't have anything there, I just have the clothes and, some stuff. So he was not worrying at all, like nothing is happening, Other people were, he knew also, the devotee, he knew other people living there, not devotees, and they were so worried, how's my house? Because I have this, big flat screen TV, 55 inches TV screen, and then I have, this, that, the other in the house. So they were very much worried what's going to happen. Will they steal these things, or will it be bombed and destroyed? And that devotee was completely peaceful. And this is the practical example. How devotees are far advanced by any means, how they're not attached, and how they're ready to give it up. Both flat designations with being a business person or whatever, even father or any other designations apart from I'm the soul. Gopi Bharta Padakamalaya Dasa Dasa Anudasa. I'm the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And yes, there was another story a devotee was saying. He was a very rich, again in Ukraine, he was a very rich businessman, and he was in an insurance business. So they were insuring a big construction sites, like for millions and millions of grivnas, which is their currency. And he said, because I was practicing devotee and I was living in this small city, so everybody knew each other. Here I am in a suit with top bankers, dealing, signing those contracts for huge money. And then there's time for Harinam. So I go to the park, and here I am sitting in this dhoti. Of course, for people it's like bed sheets, and chanting holy name there with some strange mark and chanting some mantras. And those people, those same bankers are passing by and seeing me, and they kind of, looking at me. They cannot get these things together. And of course, for me, it's a purification. I'm thinking, how much have I identified myself now? Am I already thinking myself as this big, boss of this insurance company, or am I actually the devotee? What is my real identity? And that devotee is sharing today, because insurance business was the first one to bankrupt in Ukraine when the war started. So all those bankers and all those insurance guys out of business, and because if they have identified like my father did, they're suffering like anything right now. Whereas this devotee is sitting there and chanting in a temple in a basement in Kiev, and he's just in bliss. And he's begging devotees, please, if you want to volunteer for anything, just spread the holy name. And if you're into more in philanthropic, then engage in Food for Life. That's all. We don't need to do anything else. You don't need to be a volunteer for this, that, the other. There are plenty of people who do that. Devotees are so rare. Who is doing that? Who is spreading Harinam? Who is spreading, giving prasadam? This is his realization. A very deep realization. Realized in this way. And that's why his words, even through internet, when I heard his class, it was very powerful. So we have an advantage that Srila Prabhupada gave us in terms of this transcendental knowledge. We have the practice to realize that if we act as a soul, meaning that we do the devotional activities, then eventually we may also, with such light heart, give up everything that we have accumulated here, from both things and mental concoctions that we may have accumulated due to our past or just being in a material world, in a contaminated environment, not natural, artificial for the soul. And through that practice of attentive chanting, we may finally realize the glories of the holy name. The beginning of this purport, Prabhupada mentions about karma kandiya, because it's in the verse. And this is one of the offenses of the holy name, I think, 8th offense, is thinking of the holy name as one of the rituals mentioned in the sections in the Vedas, in karma kanda sections. So this is one of the offense, because the glories of holy name goes beyond some kind of ritualistic pious activity that may give you some beautiful residence in the heavenly planets. To do what? To do the same as we do here? As this sage says to this prince, you better live forever, because after you enjoy full life, then you're dead, and then you're at hell. You start suffering. The suffering time comes. In material world, it's inevitable. Pleasure and happiness, always flickering. Pleasure and distress. Matras parshas tu kanti ashitushna sukha dukkada agama painu nityastam titikshas bharata. This will just happen. Be sure. Be there or be square. It will happen. And even if you live in Dvapara Yuga or Treta Yuga or even Satya Yuga, we see the examples from Srimad Bhagavatam when everything went well, but at some point something happened with those pious kings. There was some accident, you just gave the same cow to two brahmanas, and that's it. The whole, this whole catastrophe. Now you sit as a lizard in a deep well, waiting what's going to happen. This is life in material world. Welcome. So we have to understand we're not from here, and we have to take the process of going back home, back to Godhead, very seriously. So I would like to stop here, and if you have comments, contributions to this verse, realizations, please share. Potentially some questions or corrections. There's something in the chat. Okay, palms together. Thank you, Yashadev Prabhu, for being here. We still have 20 minutes, so I can tell more stories, but I would love to hear from you. What do you think about that? Have you yourself? How often do we think that we have to give up this body? How often do we test our consciousness? Are we ready for such things? Not for such things, for this last exam. And in this way, what do we do to prepare for that exam? Do we do our homework, our sadhana bhakti? It's interesting that both Vaidya sadhana bhakti and Raganuga sadhana bhakti, both processes are actually sadhana. Both processes are thank you, Yashadev, every day, yes. Me too. Quite often, almost every day. When I go to bed, I'm thinking, if I am to give up body now, am I ready? No, I'm not. Every time it's the same answer. Because there's still some fear and some desires. Yes, so both processes, sadhana means we're doing something repetitively, like persons going to work every day, to achieve their result in the career, whatever. So we also have the process. When I was doing Aikido, I was 13 years old. I only did it for 1 year when I was a teenager. But I remember the trainer was telling us that if you do a certain motion, not motion, but this, I don't know how to say, the flip or the turn or the throw, if you do this 10,000 times, that becomes yours. Meaning that you will master that particular technique, that particular kukiho or mayakemi or whatever the names were in Japanese. So as a part of sadhana in that Aikido, every time before we did learn something new, we had to repeat many, many times the simple flips and turns. And believe it or not, it's been over 20 years now, and I never did Aikido after that. Because I did one particular, you just have to, I don't know how to say, flip, from standing position on the ground, not damaging yourself, and then ended up on your feet. You're just kind of rolling through the ground, but in such a way, in a soft way, that you don't damage your shoulders, head, or neck, or anything. And in this way, you kind of, I don't know, not attacking, but you getting forward to the person you are interacting with. And so this particular, I think it was called mayakemi or something, I was doing it not 10,000 times, for sure not, but say I was going twice a week for this training for a year, and we were doing it 15 minutes, we were just doing that, so in 15 minutes you can do it probably, I don't know, 100 times maybe. So you multiply 200 times a week and then 50 weeks, right? So what is it? Anyway, so I did it many, many times. And I still, if you ask me to do it now, I'll still do it. Not maybe as perfectly in technique, but I can do it. That's how it's just a physiology. It becomes part of your physiology. Part of your body, you can say, part of your mental thing. And imagine if we just chant attentively 16 rounds, 2 hours a day. How many names we are repeating? So the more attentively we do that, and the more often and every day and in the morning hours, this just becomes part of us. We cannot even imagine the life without chanting anymore. We may be not realizing this, but if somebody tells us, don't chant your rounds now, persons like Tarika Prabhu or Sarvatma Prabhu, Divyananda, and others in Jagannath Pandit. If you ask those who have been chanting for over 20 years, and you say, okay, from this day you practice not to chant every day. They say, you're nuts. Even they cannot imagine the day without their hand touching the beads, Yashodevi also getting to this mark, right? 20 years over. So how can you have a day without having something in your bead bag, your hand touching and chanting? It's not possible even to imagine for devotees anymore. Those have been practicing that long. For beginning devotees, it may still be maybe it's like a burden. Sweet burden though. Because you can see how your consciousness is purified after that, how you think clearer, how you see sharper, how your consciousness is perceiving more transcendental reality, and you function in a different wave. You function in connection with Krishna. It's very good. This is life. My father is right now in a sanatorium for old people. He won a trip for 2 weeks to kind of restore the health, whatever. So he paid something, but this was like insignificant amount compared to the normal price. So he sent me a video of old people dancing in a circle with their hands together, dancing and chanting. Not chanting, they some karmi music playing, like not the bad music, something about happiness, and but it looks so pathetic. When devotees dance in this same style in kirtan, this is life, this is juice, it gives drive, it fills you up from inside out, and this whole life becomes meaningful. Whereas this is, you're looking at this, for me when I looked at it, it was like a dance of dead people. This is the first thing I thought of when I just saw this 1 minute video. It's such a shame. Yeah, people trying to seek happiness where there's no happiness. Anyway, I did another 6 minutes. Maybe somebody else can now share their thoughts. How else to prepare? What else to do? Devotees, Prabhupada disciples who are reaching Prabhupada's age, 70 and over also, they are now contemplating with great realization what a heroic act did Srila Prabhupada actually do in the age of 69, crossing the ocean, having heart attacks. I never crossed the ocean, I never was on a ship in an open sea, I was only on a river. And I never had a heart attack, and I'm young. I just cannot understand these things, But devotees, all devotees now, Prabhupada disciples who are reaching this age, and they know how difficult it is. And they lived quite you can say, also more or less healthy lifestyle, because they've been devotees since their 20s. Okay, they maybe did something in their 20s, but overall, still, they did a lot of, their life was more pious, not so sinful and so forth. And they preserved some energy, and even them, they will say, and of course they gave a lot of strength. Okay, we can say actually, some of them, they gave out lives to Prabhupada, so they were going through so many austerities, and actually they gave a lot of energy in the youth, in immense hard work, and even continue some of them till today. So those devotees now, they have such deep realizations when they speak about Prabhupada, because they have now this understanding, realization on their own bodies, and despite of that pushing, preaching, pushing their sadhana forward and like that. And it's difficult, they can understand. It was superhuman what Srila Prabhupada was doing. Superhuman. Driven completely on spiritual energy. Not sleeping more than 2 hours. And in fact, all his personal servants, they said, actually we never saw Prabhupada asleep. We know he was lying to the bed, but was he asleep? We don't know, because we have not actually seen it, because every time he was kind of aware and conscious, even in a state of so-called sleep. So his sleep was different. And Harishari, Shrutakirti Prabhu, all of them who were spending time with Prabhupada, Rameshwar Prabhu, they all say, we actually never saw Prabhupada asleep. Even it seemed like he was asleep. Because of course they were sleeping when Prabhupada was supposed to sleep. So that's another thing. Yes. And so this austerity that Srila Prabhupada has performed is absolutely astonishing. And so he gave us this, what this sage is blessing, that other sage, you may die or live, because actually he gave us service, which is the rarest commodity in this world, service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We take it sometimes for granted, but this is very rare. And this is the gift that Srila Prabhupada gave us all. And he, through personal austerity, it's like anything. Nobody can repeat what Srila Prabhupada did. Nobody lived in a temple, in New York, without any temple, without any followers, without any money, in a foreign country, different culture, people who don't have any respect for sadhus, they don't even know what sadhu is. And it's just some, you imagine those from New York or that been in this city, try imagine going there without Brooklyn Temple, without daily Harinams, with Ram Roy Prabhu group for 10 years, daily Harinams. No Harinams, no Govinda, no Bhakti Center, no Brooklyn Temple, not even famous Prasad donuts, nothing. Just try to survive in this city alone with your beads. Good luck. Good luck. But Prabhupada did. Not only that, he spread it all over the world. Okay, 9 minutes left. Please, devotees, share some thoughts.
Hare Krishna, Srimad Venu Madhurya Prabhu.
Krishna Prabhu.
Thank you so much for preparing us for death. It's one of my favorite topics.
Yes.
And I think it's really important. How do you prepare for death? Like, what is your thought process? What is your meditation? You say at night, you also think, wonder if I'll wake up. But how do we, like, what should be our state of mind? Knowing that death could come at any time, but becoming lethargic. You know what I'm getting at? If we're just just contemplating, well, death can come at any time, then we might not be so motivated to also be active and to try to make something happen in this world, which we should do for Krishna. So what is your thoughts on that? If you can sharing your death meditation.
Yes, thank you. I actually take various approaches. Even before people were thinking about, I'll start with that point when you mentioned if we just think on death, then we'll be not motivated. So actually, people did think about death in previous ages, also, and not in previous ages. I mean, in medieval times, and in history. So there was even a saying in Latin, "Memento mori," meaning remember death. And it's they were trying to remind themselves of death coming. So the bells in the churches were to remind about every hour, boom, so you can be reminded of time. In casinos today, there's no watches, no clocks. If you go to, you don't go to bed. If you ever been to a casino, I hope you have not been to a casino. I've been once. I never played there, but I just went inside. And so the walls are all. There's no windows, so you don't see the daylight. And there's no watches, so you can be lost in time. So you can be completely absorbed in gambling, in that intoxication, and spend all your money there. It's the whole purpose, to forget you about the time. The time is ticking. Forget about Krishna. Kala is me. I'm the time. Forget about it. Gambling. Just get yourself into it, right? And this is the whole thing. Gambling and intoxication. It's not only gambling. Intoxication is intoxication. Intoxication is sex. Intoxication is all those four principles are intoxication. Forgetting you about the sense of time. But the previous ages, they were reminding themselves, memento mori, the bell was ringing, the monks were sitting and they had the skulls of the previous monks, and on their skulls there was like a written note saying, we also thought it will never happen to us. There was the reminders like that, drastic ones, but they were trying to. We have a positive process. So one approach, mine approach is simple living, high thinking. That's the basis. We just have to do the bare minimum to keep our body and soul together. This is the basis of our life as devotees. And that's why this devotee, when there was a shooting in his town, and he had a house there, he probably saved money whole life for this house, but inside of the house, there was just dhotis and, some regular clothes and, maybe Srimad Bhagavatam set and, things that he has, but he's not regretting losing them. Like once I was with Indradyumna Swami traveling from, I was just flying on the same flight with Indradyumna Swami and Gurudev from Russian festival to Ukrainian festival. And in Turkey, we were flying from Krasnodar to Turkey and then from Turkey to Dasa to Ukraine. In Turkey, they just picked his danda, and they didn't allow him to have the danda on the further flight. They just confiscated it, take it from him. And this danda, there was some apparently like super rare danda. They were like producing it for 1 year. There was some pasta with the danda. Anyway, it was so special. And they just took it, and he was trying to say, this is just I'm a monk. This is what we had. They didn't listen. I was so angry, when I heard, because I was just passing this security control just before Indradyumna Swami Gurudev, and they were after me. And I didn't hear what's happened. So when I heard that it happened, I ran back. I tried to look, which gate it was, and I called Radha Krishna Prabhu in Hungary, because he's the GBC for Turkey. I said, do you know any devotee? I know the devotees are working in an airport. Can you please arrange this danda to be... Anyway, I did my best, and I even found it, but they couldn't retrieve it from these customs. They just took it away. But the reaction of Indradyumna Swami was, it was just a few minutes after this happened, and it was very dear danda to him also. There was some present, there were some pastimes with that. He said, they may take our danda, but they cannot take our holy name. He said it to me, to my face, when I asked him that I regret. He said this. And he didn't say it just to say it. He already said it in a realized way, that he already was detached from that. So when we keep it simple, our life simple, and we know what to attach to, and that is holy name. And devotees, of course. Attachment to devotees is not a material attachment. If your wife is a devotee, it's not a material attachment. If you remind yourself, as a Vaishnavas, about holy name and the practice, this attachment, as Prabhupada said, such attachment to such women will liberate you, because they will be the ones chanting when you are leaving the body and reminding you about Krishna. So we just have to develop that relationship with Krishna. So one approach from one side is simple living, high thinking. I don't have a car. I have a flat, but it's one bedroom flat, small flat. If something happens to it, I don't mind. I really I don't get myself attached to these things. That's why I don't have a car. I don't want to have a car. Why? Only problems fixing it and like that. I'm just serving. I don't even leave Gitanagari. So I just try to keep things to minimum. Some things that are needed for health, okay, I'll have them. And I'm also trying to get rid of things also quite often. If I have time to go through my things, I just try to. Like Navin Narada said, I keep it simple. I try to give him new socks. He said, I don't need socks. I said, okay, take this woolen jacket. He said, I don't want to, I just try to keep it simple. He had a hole in his hoodie. I thought maybe he needs to be looking more presentable, so I tried to give him one of mine, a new one. And he rejected. He said, Prabhu, I keep it simple. I have a van, I get a little suitcase there, that's it. Okay, everybody has a different standard, but the point is that it's the less things we have in terms of, okay, we may have sophisticated phone and laptops for the service, that's fine. But other things we don't really need much, and certainly we should not get attached to them. So that's one thing. So keep your attachments, material things, so we can get rid of that when the death approaches, if it will be like a slower process, and we can get rid of this attachment quicker. That's one thing. But another thing, even more important, is never to forget Krishna and always to remember him. Develop that relationship with Krishna, because you have to have the trust, and there's no other shelter. So the only shelter will be Krishna. And if it's your trust towards a friend, then you don't care what calamity you're going through. You have your friend nearby. He's right there in your heart, as Bhaktisiddhanta said. Even so that the super soul of the super soul, devotee is the super soul of the super soul. That dear relationship between devotee and Krishna is so sweet. And if we can just get to that platform, or just nearby that platform, or just be a devotee of the devotee, and that Krishna loves even more. So in any way you're safe if you just develop that relationship with the Gurudev, with the devotees, and with the Lord. And that's what I'm striving for every time. I'm trying my best. And I see I'm not succeeding yet, and that's what gives me grief sometimes. But I'm trying to develop the determination to develop that, because I think this is the only thing that will save us, according to Shastra, and some little practical realization by observing how devotees are living the bodies. If they have a good relationship with devotees, how they live the body, and if they have a bad relationship with devotees, how they live the body. It's a big difference. And of course, how materialists live the body. It's a drastic difference. Okay, so deities are ready. So I don't know, Ashdev Prabhu, I hope I gave a little insight. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, I'm fired up for this. Jai Shri Radha Damodar ki